and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
You're listening to Nosebleed Radio. Here's your host, Tucker Franklin.
What is up? Welcome to episode 8 of Nosebleed Radio. I'm here with the boys, Karen Brennan.
How's it going?
Toby Dad.
What's up?
And Shane Miller.
How's it going, guys? Roll Hawks.
Episode 8 today, so we're going to go and talk about famous number 8s. Shane, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'm going to start off with one of my favorite quarterbacks in history, Troy Aikman. One of the three triplets of our two-time Super Bowl winning Cowboys team with him, Emmitt Smith, and Michael Irving. So one of the all-time greats for the Dallas Cowboys.
I've got Cal Ripken Jr., the Iron Man himself. Played in a record-setting number of games in a row. I don't think it'll ever be touched in the MLB. Also going with Jordan Clarkson. We've had a few Mizzou basketball guys coming on. Expected a few Mizzou basketball guys. Jordan Clarkson right now probably going to be playing in the NBA Finals this year, maybe with LeBron. So we'll see. Jordan Clarkson, number 8.
Hey, big fan of Jordan Clarkson. I watched him play against the Heat the other day. Had a good game. My number 8s are going to be Davey O'Brien, quarterback for TCU in 1935 and 38. O'Brien led the Horned Frogs to an undefeated season in 38. That year, he became the first player to win the Heisman, Maxwell, and Walter Camp trophies in the same year.
Awards named after him, too.
You know you're a good player when you have an award named after you.
That's a good indicator. Okay, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
I was curious before, but then they named an award after me, so I think I'm...
But he never
Walter
won his
Payton.
own award.
True,
Ooh.
he never won his own award. Does that
That's
take him down a notch?
What makes me riled up about this whole award talk is that when it comes to the award for designated hitters, there have been players designated hitters that have won the award, but the guy who the award's named after isn't in the Hall of Fame yet, and the people who have won this award, they're in the Hall of Fame. So it really grinds my gears.
My second number 8, famous number 8, the Yaz, Carl Yastrzemski, one of the great MLB players, career batting average of .285, had 3,419 hits, hit 452 round trippers, and had 1,844 RBIs.
My number 8 is probably the only player that I've liked that has ever played for the Yankees, and that's Yogi Berra. He was known on and off the field, on the field for his great playing ability, but off the field for his amazing quotes, like, "The future ain't what it used to be." You can observe a lot by just watching. If you don't know where you're going, you'll end up somewhere else. And my favorite, baseball is 90% mental and the other half is physical.
Wiser words have never been spoken outside of a bar.
If you look at his quotes, it seems like he was drunk all the time.
He probably was. I feel like everyone back in that time was just hammered all the time just because life sucked at that point.
Yeah, he had to.
He's got one quote that says, "No one goes there nowadays, it's too crowded." What does that mean, Yogi?
Have you guys ever seen the movie Major League 2?
Yes.
Yeah, you know the catcher with all his sayings is
Yep.
it ain't over till it's over. That's always reminded me of Yogi Berra's stupid quotes like that.
Major League 2 is actually an awful movie.
Okay, I wouldn't say awful. I like Major League 2.
Oh, wow.
Do you like it better than the first one?
No, not better than the first one. The first one was by far better, but I still think Major League 2 is a good movie.
Have you seen Major League 3?
I didn't know there was Major League 3.
There is.
Is it bad?
The second one was bad.
The second one was good. Not great, but it was good.
The Major League 3 is called Back to the Minors. Made 98.
That sounds not
4.5 stars out of 10 on the old IMDb. So draw your own conclusions from that. I'm just here presenting the facts.
That's batting 400. That'll get you in the Hall of Fame in the majors. So.
Let's move on to opening day. It's my favorite holiday. Everyone starts with a clean slate, 0-0. So, fellas, do we have any predictions for the big season?
I'll go first. I think that the World Series matchup, which is everybody's favorite to predict early in the season, just based on off-season additions, the roster as a whole entering the season, I've got the Houston Astros repeating as American League champions, and I've got them going up against the Cubs from the National League, and they look pretty sharp. I like the Red Sox roster a lot. I think they match their pitching with a pretty dynamic roster or lineup. And so I really look forward to seeing those two teams in the series. Two teams who, as of recent, have broken curses. They've both kind of reached that or gone over that hump, so to say. So I think those are the two teams this year that I've got going to the World Series.
The Cubs looked sharp, and that pains me to say as a Cardinals fan, but I don't think it helped anybody that they were playing against a AAA roster in the Miami Marlins. It's tough to do, especially with that World Series hangover we saw last year with the Cubs team, and we heard from interviews with their players. The hangover from the World Series is real. So I think it'll be tough, but with the addition of Garrett Cole, I think the Astros will repeat again. I don't think the Giancarlo Stanton addition is enough to take the Yankees to the next level. JD Martinez helps the Red Sox out a lot, so I think the Red Sox end up beating the Yankees for the American League East title. I think the Yankees, for a bold prediction for me, I think they'll slide in at the second wild card spot. From the National League, it'll be tough to beat the Dodgers again. The Cubs will look good. We're recording this during opening day, so there's still games going on. So the Cardinals game was over, and the Mets looked really good. It didn't help that the Cardinals looked really bad, but I'm predicting that the Cardinals will make the playoffs, whether it be in that second wild card spot. I just think that the National League is too wide open to predict a champion right now from that one, because there are just too many good teams.
And a lot of people have talked about the Washington Nationals potentially being the World Series team, but they've talked about that for the past however many years. They've had Harper and Strasburg's been healthy, and they just never seem to quite get over that hump. You know, they get to the playoffs every year. They have a few good games. Harper hit some bombs in the 8th inning, 9th inning, and you really feel like the Nationals are about to catch some momentum and ride it into the series, but it just never happens. And like you said, the National League is so wide open. I really like teams that have experience, that have been there, done that, and have like that winning culture already in place. So I think I agree with you. The Dodgers are going to be super hard to beat. The Cubs will be a tough team to beat if they make it there. The American League right now, it really seems like it's a 3-team race for the most part between the Yankees, Red Sox, and Astros. And I lead the Astros, and I just think like this is a team who's coming into the season angry because everybody's talked about the Red Sox and Yankees. Everybody's told the Astros how good they think those teams have gotten. But nobody's the Astros a little bit flown under the radar entering the season. I know the people down in Houston aren't going to let them fly under the radar, but kind of a team that's maybe being slept on even after winning a World Series.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's crazy to win a World Series and then be like under the radar, too.
Yeah, a lot of people like I know Tucker likes the Red Sox as a team right now, a World Series favorite, and they're a fantastic team, but I just look at, the addition of Garrett Cole, but last season's addition of Justin Verlander, having him for a full season this year. The pitching staff improved for the Astros, and they're still going to have the big bats there. We saw George Springer hit a home run on the first at-bat for the Astros this season. So, this might be a cold take, but I think George Springer this year is going to win American League MVP. I think the Astros are going to have an even better season than they had last year, regular season-wise. And then come postseason, of course, it's anybody's game, but I really like what the Astros have done with the team. I like that they didn't lose any key pieces. They've got a bunch of young guys who want to play together. They've got a lot of hungry guys on that team, too. So I really like the Astros. I think not just to win the American League, but to win the World Series over either the Dodgers or Cubs, whoever comes out of the National League.
I think that a lot of people, because of all the hoopla about the Yankees, the Astros, and the Red Sox, they're sleeping on the Cleveland Indians. And the Indians are playing in I know you guys don't want to hear this, but a rather weak division. So they're going to be able to...
I agree with you.
They're going to be able to rack up those wins and maybe potentially even get in that number one spot for the best record in the AL, so get the home field advantage throughout, which we've seen home field advantage is killer. But the Angels improved, and so they'll be able to give the Astros trouble. The Angels will be the only ones that'll give the Astros trouble in that division, but don't sleep on the Cleveland Indians either.
I think what you said is correct. I think the Indians are going to come out top of their division. That division really doesn't have too much competition in it right now, especially with the way the Royals are looking, with Salvi tearing his MCL by walking out of a hotel or whatever the hell he was doing there. I really think the hype for the Yankees is way overblown to what it should be. I think people do this with the Yankees all the time where they make some moves and people like lose their minds, but all they have right now is hitters. And we've said this multiple times that they're going to lose to good pitching. So they'll beat those middle-of-the-road teams that don't have good pitching or good hitting, and they'll just like slaughter them by hitting like 50 home runs out of Yankee Stadium. But when it comes to playing in really tight games, like against Boston or against Verlander in Houston, I don't think they win those games. So the Astros are still my pick for that league. I think it's hard to bet against them coming off of the World Series. They have, like you said, they retain so much of their talent. They're still hungry. I think it's hard to bet against them there. Another thing you said with Washington, if they don't make it to the World Series this year, I don't think they ever will, because not with the team they have right now. They've been so close so many times, and they're so talented, honestly. I don't know what's not getting them there. So if they don't do it now, they need to scrap the team and get a new one, because this one's not going to make it.
And Harper is actually up for free agency after the season. And there's been a lot of teams that have expressed interest, and he's expressed interest, like at least some interest in him leaving. He tried to dismiss it in the spring. He said, I'm not talking about anything next year coming up, but everybody knows that every man's got his price as well. And if a team's willing to shell out big bucks, then who knows? We could have seen the last of Bryce in Washington this year, especially if they don't go to the World Series. And I agree with the point that Kieran said. I think the reason that some of us are sleeping on the Indians is the last 2 seasons we've seen them have a tremendous amount of success. They lost to the Cubs. They blew the 3-1 lead in the World Series, obviously. Last year in the divisional round, they blew a 2-0 lead to the Yankees. They just had to win one more game. They let the Yankees come back, 3-game sweep. And the Yankees obviously took the Astros to 7, which is why I think the Yankees are so hyped up right now. But I agree. I think the Indians aren't going to have a whole lot of competition in the Central, at least. They don't have a whole lot to worry about. The reigning AL Cy Young winner, they've still got a tremendous lineup as well. I think the Indians are just one of those teams where I look at like some of the struggles they've had in the postseason, and it's hard to overlook that. It's like NBA teams are struggling in the postseason. It's hard for people to overlook that and really say, okay, this team is going to make it over the hump this year. Like, people are still doubting the Rockets in the NBA. I think it's the same thing with the Indians right now in the MLB, where they'll get there, but you just don't have any confidence in them, really, based on the last 2 postseasons that you've seen.
I wrote a blog a week after pitchers and catchers reported for spring training about I actually titled it my way too early MLB predictions, and that's just what they were, way too early. I had the Red Sox winning the AL East. In the Central, obviously the Indians winning. I mean, it'll be close with the Twins, but to call it a 2-horse race is kind of generous to the Twins at this point. AL West, I think the Astros will make it. I don't think Shohei Ohtani is going to be as good as people think he's going to be. In the National League, the NL East is going to be pretty much dominated by the Nationals, I think. You look at the Braves, Mets, Phillies, and Marlins. Marlins aren't very good. Phillies will probably be one of those under-the-radar teams that a lot of people don't expect a lot out of, but they'll still perform over what people think. The Mets we watched today, they looked all right. I was kind of surprised by the Mets, but if I had to reorder that, I'd probably put the Mets at 2, Phillies at 3. In the NL West, I had the Dodgers winning that. That's such a tough division, too, with the Dodgers, Rockies, Diamondbacks, Giants, and the Padres. The Padres are kind of like the odd man out in that, but all of those teams are just so ridiculously good.
Yeah, that's stacked.
The National League is going to be such a hard league to try to win, but in my World Series I have the Milwaukee Brewers coming out of that league and the Red Sox coming out from the American League. Like Toby said earlier, I'm big on the Red Sox. I got the Brewers winning it in 7 games. So I think that the Brewers offseason additions can give them that leg up. Yes, they did not make the playoffs last year, but they added Christian Yelich and Lorenzo Cain. I think that outfield is just too good not to do something with.
That outfield, it mixes and matches a lot of – you've got some speed, you've got young talent, you've got some great defensive ability brought by Cain, the power brought by Eric Thames. I mean, you look at the Brewers outfield, there's probably not a better outfield in the National League. There's some good outfielders in the National League by themselves, but you take a trio like that, and they could take you a long way because, I mean, just the additions that the Brewers have made, they're going to push, at least they'll push the Cubs for the NL Central title. And I agree with you in the NL East. There's really no real challenge there for the Nationals. But I do have a player from the NL East that I think is going to raise a lot of eyebrows this year, Ronald Acuna for the Atlanta Braves. He's a right fielder. That's my hot take for the day. Ronald Acuna is going to be pushing for an all-star bid by midseason. He's a youngster. He was the number 1 ranked recruit last year, or prospect coming up to the majors, number 1 ranked prospect. And I think he's really going to turn some heads this year. They talked about him a little bit in spring training. Mark Teixeira talked about him last night, and he was blown away by him. I think anytime you grab the admiration of a player who's been to all-star games, who's won World Series, like you kind of have to respect a guy like that. And I think he'll do big things in Atlanta too. So at least not as a team, from a team aspect, I don't think the Braves will be much, but I think there's some fascinating young players to look at, Rhys Hoskins and stuff for the Phillies. So I think there's going to be a lot of excitement about the MLB season, even for the teams that maybe aren't competing for that World Series bid.
One thing I'm really looking forward to this season is them basically giving Royals tickets away, because we are currently watching the Royals blow a 4-0 lead to the White Sox. We are now down 5-4. This is going to be a really depressing season, but at least we will get to see some games for pretty cheap, so that's a plus. I will say, though, the last time I predicted a team to do terribly, the USA rugby team won the championship. Maybe I'm an anti-jinx. I'm an anti-jinx. That's what we'll call it.
I think one thing that you guys can look forward to is the Royals. They are in a slight rebuild. Okay, they are in a rebuild.
Slight.
But there have been some real quick rebuilds as of recently because of, like, the Phillies. They were in a rebuild, and now they're contending for the division. The Braves, they're in a rebuild, and they're looking pretty good, too. The Brewers turned around a pretty quick rebuild. I don't think they're going to win the World Series, though, because that rotation. Sure, they added bats, but the rotation is what gets me. So, yeah, just chin up, guys. The rebuild might go quick.
This season's going to be so depressing.
At least you guys have all those, like, top 100 prospects, don't you?
Right, yeah. As a Royals and Rays fan, I'm just excited when, like, if the Rays get, like, 3 guys on base in an inning, I'm like, oh, shit. This is wild. Not looking forward to the results of the season, but looking forward to seeing the teams play. And, yeah, like Shane said, looking forward to the $5 tickets coming back again.
Final Four is in San Antonio this weekend. We have Michigan playing Loyola Chicago and Villanova playing Kansas. Give our predictions for the championship game and who we think's going to win. I'll go ahead and get us started here, actually. I think that Loyola Chicago is going to beat Michigan. Now, that's not going to make Toby very happy. They have a lot of guys who can score. They haven't had the same guy really come up and show every night. They've had a different guy perform to a top level. On the other side, I think Villanova will beat Kansas. Then I think
You just
Villanova's
pissed
better.
Toby off so much by both of those picks.
It's actually interesting because there's a statistic that came out because Loyola Chicago has not had the same guy lead in scoring for 2 games this tournament. They've also not had the same guy lead in assist in this entire tournament, like in a single game. There's been quite a few teams who have gone to the Final Four and haven't had that. Not a single one of those teams have won the national championship. One of them advanced to the national championship. That was the Fab 5 team, their sophomore seasons at Michigan, who lost to Christian Leitner's Duke. They lost to North Carolina that year. There is something to be said about having that many guys that you can distribute the ball to, but when you really need somebody who can be a go-to scorer, and we've seen it so far in this tournament, guys who have had a player that they can rely on down the stretch, Malik Newman for Kansas, you give the ball to Jalen Brunson when the game's getting close against Texas Tech there for Nova in the Elite Eight. Those guys will go out and make plays. Loyola, they've made a lot of plays this tournament. There's been the Custer shot against Tennessee, the Ingram shot against Miami, Marcus Towns shot against Nevada. There's been a lot of guys who have stepped up and make plays, but they haven't really played a team, I think, like Michigan up to this point. A team that defends the ball really well, a team that could shoot lights out. There hasn't been a single team that could shoot the ball as well as Loyola that they've played, except maybe Nevada, who went absolutely ice cold in that game. But what Nevada doesn't do is play defense. Defense is the reason I think Michigan will beat Loyola. And actually, it's the lack of defense is the reason I think Kansas is going to end up beating Villanova. That's a very biased prediction. Villanova's been by far the most consistent team in the tournament. But the run that Kansas has been on, the run that personally Malik Newman has been on, and those guards for KU, makes it almost an impossible matchup to guard. The way they spread the ball, shoot the ball, the way they can distribute between each other, and the senior leadership brought by Devontae Graham, I think, is going to push them into the final. Also, another biased prediction. I'm taking Michigan over Kansas in the final. Again, the defense aspect. Michigan's by far the best defensive team left in the Final Four. And I think I agree with most dads out there. Defense does win championships. So I'm going with my boys, the Michigan Wolverines. Hopefully I don't jinx it. We'll see what happens, though.
Let me give my champion real quick. I didn't get to my champion. I'm going to take Villanova over Loyola in the finals.
I kind of agree with Toby. I think Sister Jean's just about out of magic right now. They've had an incredible run. I don't think anyone can say that. But I think a lot of their success has been due to teams underestimating them and not playing them as hard as they definitely should have, especially in the early rounds. Like when it came to Nevada, like you said, Nevada was just cold. They could not make baskets to save their lives. But I think Michigan is too well coached. I think they're too good of talent to let this game pass them by, especially in the Final Four when everything's on the line. But I do think it would be a smart idea for them to go find 2 nuns and just dress them up in Michigan gear, put them on the court, like on the side of the court, not obviously have them playing or anything, but just like put them like courtside, show them on the camera and everything, be like, see, we're even beating you in amount of nuns cheering for us right now. I think that's a good PR move, and it'll actually give them some extra juju for the game. On the other side, I think Villanova beats Kansas. I think Villanova is by far the best team in the tournament of this league. I've said that the entire time. I've always had them in my championship game. So I think it's going to be Villanova-Michigan. I think Villanova wins a close game because, like Toby said, Michigan's got a good defense, but I think Villanova is just too talented to lose this championship this year.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of go with Shane and Toby on this one. I think John Beilein is probably the most underrated coach. I think he could be arguably the best coach in college basketball right now. Like Toby said, that teams haven't really been able to stop it. I think John Beilein will coach that defense up. He won't overlook Loyola this time. I think this is where I think the clock's finally going to strike midnight. I also think that Villanova is going to outscore Kansas. There will not be a lot of not a lot of basketball. There'll be a decent amount of basketball played in that game. There won't be a whole lot of defense played in that game, but I think Villanova will outscore Kansas. And so, this is tough. Defense wins championship. I'm going to pick Villanova. Yeah, I'm going to pick Villanova over Michigan.
With most teams' seasons coming to an end here in the tournament, a lot of players declaring for the draft. Some big ones: Michael Porter Jr. from Missouri, Miles Bridges from Michigan State, and Mo Bamba from Texas all declared for the draft. More will probably come later, but as of now, those are what we have. Toby, what are your thoughts on those guys entering the draft?
I think it's a good idea for all three of these guys to enter the draft, which I know isn't going to make the Mizzou basketball fans very happy. Michael Porter Jr., there's a reason he was ranked the number 2 recruit coming into the season, you know. And he would have been number 1 had Marvin Bagley not come. Marvin Bagley, also one of those guys who declared for the draft. But that was pretty obviously going to happen. Michael Porter Jr., he only played 53 minutes in college. But it almost seems like nowadays you don't have to do a whole lot in college. Like statistically, you don't have to win games in college. You have to go, and you have to show at least a little bit that you have flashes of potential. And they're going to pick you based on that. Like Markelle Fultz was the number 1 pick last year. Washington was like 14-20. They had like a 14-20 record, but he was the number 1 overall pick. They saw flashes of potential. They said, all right, we like that. We think we can develop this further in the NBA. And Michael Porter Jr., while only playing 53 minutes, there were times when he showed flashes of potential in the few games that he played. The game against Georgia, he hit a clutch shot late in the game, trying to pull him closer. He was obviously winded in that NCAA tournament game, but I think that for him, he's really not going to get in a better position than where he's at right now to go into the draft. Like, you can't really improve from being a top 5, top 10 prospect. Miles Bridges did it last year, thinking that he was going to go 1 through 3 this year, and he was where from there. And he's probably dropped further down the draft boards with the new guys coming in, showing what they were made of. Miles Bridges had a fantastic season, but obviously not near what he expected it would be with Michigan State going out so early. For all three of these guys, they're ready to go to the NBA right now. They want to go. They want to make their money, which, more power to them. There's a lot of fans who will complain about the one-and-done rule. I know pretty much everybody who's declared right now is a freshman except for Bridges. He's a sophomore. But I think it was the right decision for them as individual players. And you can only hope that it works out for all the guys, because there's been a lot of instances now that have led to this debate because there have been the one-and-dones who go, and then they're just not ready for the NBA. They kind of drift off into nowhere. You'll find them playing like backup center for the Pelicans or something. So you hope they do well. These guys are all going to go in the lottery, and I think it was a good decision for each one of these guys to throw their name in the draft.
I agree with Toby. I think it was a good call for especially Michael Porter Jr. to declare for the draft now. I think he could only hurt his draft prospect by staying another year. When you're coming out of, he was like top 10 recruit in the nation or something when he was in high school. Number 2 in the nation when he was coming out of high school. He's one of those guys, if that one and done rule wasn't there, he would have just gone straight to the pros. A lot of people thought. So I think by him staying another year, all he could do is show like, oh no, he really can't play with this good a talent at this level, or he would just maintain his expectations. He wouldn't be able to really exceed those expectations and make his draft prospect any higher. So I think it's good for him to leave now. I think it sucks for Mizzou, but that's the name of the game for college basketball right now. If I was an NBA coach, NBA owner, I would be very wary of picking someone like him where I haven't really seen him play much of college ball, because I think that's what that rule is there for the one-and-done rule, so you can see them outside of high school competition and you can see what they do against better competition. We really haven't seen him like that. I know Toby said he's had some flashes, but you haven't really seen him consistently play against good competition yet, so I'd be a little wary about that.
The one-and-done rule is actually put into effect to protect the older players in the NBA. So it's not so they can get more view of him playing college basketball. It's so the older guys can have a longer career.
I know that too. But I think at least part of it, if I was an NBA owner or coach, I would like that one-and-done rule, because then I can see them play. I know that's not the main intention for it, but it does give you that added benefit of getting to watch them play at a higher level.
And there's players like Kyrie Irving. He didn't play very much. He played
he played 11 games at Duke.
A handful of games, yeah.
Yeah. The one-and-done rule, you understand why they do it. It's not quite the physical beast that football is, where you stay until you're a junior, at least 2 years removed from high school. You look at a guy like Zion Williamson, for example, the games that he's played in high school where he just seemingly dominates. He scores 50 every night. It looks like he's got, 35 dunks per game or something like that, something insane. They played in the McDonald's All-American game, and he played against guys that were just as good as he was. And he didn't look like the physical beast that we knew he was, even in an all-star game, where just about everybody was just throwing down dunks anytime they could. He didn't look like that same physical beast against those guys. And I think it's for players like that you really want to enact the rule. You don't want guys to get overconfident coming out of high school, guys that think they're better than they are. Because there's been a lot of examples of that, too. I mean, it's worked out great for guys like Kevin Garnett, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James coming straight out of high school. But guys sometimes will get too big of an ego. People will tell them they're better than they are, forcing them to go to college. They'll put them with a college coach who'll really, if he takes an interest in them, he'll really care about them as a person, tell them, hey, you're ready to go, hey, you're not ready to go. And I think that really helps players in the long run, even if it is just for a season. Some guys, they just don't think that way. I know Basley, the number 9 recruit in the country, was going to Syracuse. He chose to forego Syracuse, and he decided that he was going to play in the NBA G League, so he was going to make money for a season before he could actually enter the NBA draft after the conclusion of next season. I think to each his own, but I think the one-and-done rule is fairly effective in what it tries to do in protecting, like you said, old players, as well as protecting the new guys coming into the league, making sure that they don't come in overconfident and wash out and end up, nowhere playing basketball in Serbia or something.
Or Lithuania.
He entered the draft. Do you guys? There's no way he gets taken, right? No way.
Which player?
LiAngelo.
No. Well, no, I don't think so. I just don't think he won. Even if he was, and he balled out in his last game in like that big baller brand challenge where he had 72 points and 11 rebounds. He's essentially playing against like high school competition because they're playing the Lithuania 2 league, which is worse than California high school basketball. So he actually went. He would now be like a high school super senior, I guess, playing against other high school guys. So I think NBA prospects will look at that. They'll say, okay, what can you do against these guys? Like bring them into the combine and say, what can you do against a Bagley? What can you do against an Ayton? What would you do against guys like that? And I don't think he'll succeed there. I think there's a reason UCLA buried him on the bench even before he got in trouble, shoplifting in China. And I just don't think NBA teams want the media circus that follows the Ball family to join up with them. I mean, he really would serve no purpose to any NBA team at this point in his career.
LeVar Ball, if you care to discuss, our DMs are open, so just anytime.
Gonna move to some NFL news. LA Rams made a lot of moves here, and fellas, do you think the LA Rams defense will be suspended by week 3?
Adding Ndamukong Suh definitely adds, at a minimum, just like the thug factor to the team. I hate to say thug, but that's what Ndamukong Suh has turned into in the NFL. He's consistently voted the most hated player in the NFL and the dirtiest player. I think I kind of agree that I think the whole defense league is going to be suspended by week 3, but that factor of having that almost that fear factor again when against other teams where we're the monsters, we're coming out here, we're going to smash you, that adds such a mental advantage to them. I think they're going to be super good coming out of the gate. If you look back at I always look back at Nebraska's old championship teams, our defense was just ruthless. We were taking people's heads off. We were taking picks back to the house and throwing it back at them. We were unstoppable and we knew it. So coming with guys like this who are I know I'm going to dominate every play and you're just going to have to take it. You don't get a chance to fight against me. That's going to be huge for the LA Rams. I really am kind of excited to see how they play, even though I know they're NFC and we're going to have to play against them. But I want to see how well they do with this defense and see if they can actually make a playoff run or even a Super Bowl run this year.
Yeah, the defense is wild. You have Aaron Donald, you have Ndamukong Suh, you have Aqib Talib, you have Marcus Peters. Those are 4 marquee names right there. And the Chiefs have to play them in just regular Mexico next year. So I'm not looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think with the Rams move to LA, they really went Hollywood. They've got all these personalities on the team now because you've got Ndamukong Suh, monster of a man, great defensive tackle, serious problems on the field, playing dirty, stuff like that. Marcus Peters, I think a lot of people assume the Chiefs got rid of him, locker room head case, sometimes throws tantrums on the field. Aqib Talib, same way in Denver. I don't think that's why Denver got rid of him. I think he's getting up there in age, but he's another guy, very big ego. On the field, he's a little bit of a talker, chain snatcher on the field. And then you pair that with the actual best player on their defense, Aaron Donald, who's not by any means just the stand-up guy. He's been ejected from games before. He's gotten in trouble, making contact with refs, penalties after plays. And you've got a lot of egos on that Rams defense right now, and it's really like a Hollywood movie with all these egos like clashing on the defensive side of the ball right now. I think the Rams defense is going to be very good. Obviously, if you have that much talent, you're going to have a really good defense. But I really want to see how just the defense in general works together, because these are 4 very egotistical players. These are 4 guys who say, I'm better than you. I'm better than the game. A lot of them sometimes say, I'm better than the game itself with the way that they play. So I really want to see how that, works itself out within the Rams defense. I would definitely be afraid to play against them if I was an offensive player. So
speaking of big personalities, Odell Beckham Jr., he's got a saga surrounding him now with the New York Giants. They're listening to trade offers. One of them was from the Los Angeles Rams. So imagine getting that personality on their team. Where do you guys think that he's going to land next year if he plays for the Giants, or what other team do you think?
I really want him to end up on the Browns.
That'd
because
be awesome.
He would not be doing those dances anymore if he ended up on the Browns. He wouldn't be doing these dances. He's used to 3-13 seasons by now and a little bit of disappointing finishes. But, I mean, man, send him to Cleveland. He could team up with Jarvis. They could make.
Maybe a good wide receiver core.
They'd be the all pregame team. The Cleveland Browns would be.
Yeah.
Come out for pregames, leave by the first quarter with those guys playing. But I think he's going to stay in New York because I think the more that's talked about it, the less chances that teams are going to take on it, because they're saying, okay, there has to be a reason the Giants want to get rid of this guy, because you don't find a guy with this much talent that you want to do away with. So there has to be something with Odell Beckham and like just team chemistry. I guess the way he works with others, kind of just the head case aspect that he brings. So I think that he's going to stay in New York, at least for this upcoming season.
Yeah, I agree. I really hope he goes to the Browns. I think the Browns need someone with that experience of winning more than one game. And he's at least won 3 in the last couple seasons. So that's 3 times as many as they've won in the last 2 seasons. So that's a huge advantage going to the Browns. They could triple their wins in one season over the last 2 seasons just by adding this one player with that much experience. It would be cool to see him going up against the Steelers twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of attitude in that game also. I mean, especially just coming from him in general, but he loves to fight with anyone. I love watching the super competitive games like in the AFC with like Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, and now it could be Pittsburgh and the Browns also. That would be sweet, because that's one that's kind of gone to the wayside in the shadows of Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. But I honestly want the Browns to get really good. I am so sick of them being bad, and I want them to get talent. Like, they're like your little brother, like, that sucks at everything. Like, you want to compete with them a little bit, but at some point you're just like, all right, dude, you got to start winning some games here. This is getting really embarrassing and like hard for me to watch you lose all these games all the time. So I'm a big proponent of the Browns getting good.
Also, just imagine Odell Beckham Jr. He had that spat with Josh Norman. Imagine Odell Beckham Jr. going up against Pac-Man Jones from the Bengals. I think that would be high-quality television there from 2 teams that won't do anything in the season. But that makes that a marquee matchup just to see those 2 guys go at it.
Yeah, I think he's going to go to the Rams. The Rams already packaged a deal, including their first-round draft pick, to send to New York. But New York said they want 2 first-round draft picks, which I'm not even sure how that's possible. They'd have to trade for another person's first-round draft pick to get it and then trade it to New York. But I still think that he finds a way to be on the Rams by the start of the season.
Unless both first-rounders don't have to be this year, unless they just want 2 first-rounders total. So they could trade this year and next year. But I think he's going to end up either with like the Chargers or the Rams, like a Los Angeles team. That way he doesn't have to travel for his boat parties. He can just have them at home. Los Angeles seems more welcoming to the type of personality he is. But I feel like more teams like the Buffalo Bills, a team that has a good defense, just seems to be like a big play guy away from maybe making an impact. Like if the Buffalo Bills maybe trade up and get their quarterback, because right now sitting at the 12th spot, it looks like most of them will be gone in the draft. If they get their quarterback for the future and they get that big play receiver, they'll be dangerous. So I feel like the Buffalo Bills should be making more of a push than they are, but then again, we don't have any sources, so we don't know.
I think if I'm Odell's agent, I'm trying to get him as far away from the ocean as possible. So I'm looking into like Detroit, Green Bay, Kansas City, any of these like middle of the country teams where he cannot find a boat or ocean anywhere, because he was so good until that stupid boat party, and then he just literally shat the bed and couldn't do anything against anyone.
Don't send him to the Vikings, because they've had enough
they have a boat problem.
So
They have a big boat problem in Minnesota.
Owners' meetings were in Orlando this past week. Had a couple rule changes. One of the big ones was the catch rule. So what do you guys think of that?
I like that they kind of clarified what a catch was, because that was just a pretty stupid issue to have all the way around. I feel like people watching the game knew it was a catch. I'm a Patriots fan, but people who thought that like Zach Ertz or Corey Clement didn't catch the football in the Super Bowl, that's absurd. Like, I don't know exactly what they're watching. Those are pretty obvious catches. I was super shocked by the Jesse James one that went the Patriots' way this season. The Dez Bryant one, obviously, is, unfortunate for you as a Cowboys fan. They can't go back and change that. But I think now that there's, like, clarity on the rule, you'll start to see the game the way we used to see it, before Calvin Johnson caught the game-winning touchdown against the Bears. And the NFL said, no, the Lions can't win a game. That's ridiculous. That's definitely a drop pass. So I think football going back to, like, that, at least in the catch department, is going to help enhance the game a little bit, I think.
I'm honestly a little pissed about this new catch rule. The old one, which obviously just destroyed my life when Dez, he obviously caught that ball, and they called it not a catch. I think they should stick with that until every single team is heartbroken by it, like I was, and then they change the rule, because I think it's crap that we're the ones that started it, and we're the ones that got the most suffering from it. So I'm a little pissed, but I think it's good moving forward for football.
Typical Cowboys fan.
I think it is impressive that all 32 owners voted unanimously for this new catch rule. I think that's good. I mean, at least it's like a common sense catch rule now.
Yeah.
Because before, like we said earlier, there was so much confusion with what was a catch and what's not a catch that
Right.
At least we finally have some clarity as to what is a catch. Next,
we're going to move into our interview with Heisman Trophy winner Eric Crouch. So here he is, Eric Crouch. We're here with Heisman Trophy winner Eric Crouch. Eric, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Doing good. So first off, I want to start off by saying congratulations on the new coaching job at Midland. How does it feel to be back around college football?
I love it. I really do. I'm really enjoying just learning the new offense and getting to know our players, working with our staff. We got a really young staff, so a lot of good guys, a lot of football knowledge, a lot of energy, and we're going to do some good things. Jeff Jamrog is really doing some nice things at Midland, and I'm just glad to be a part of it. Really am.
That'll be fun. What are you looking forward to most about coaching?
Well, I'm just looking to develop players, be part of that team camaraderie and see kids develop and get better and build confidence in themselves. And everybody's got something to work on. I mean, that's just how it is. Being an individual, it doesn't matter if it's sports or not. So, but being a football coach and pinpointing athletics and how you compete and, hold yourself to a high standard, really that's what I'm going to enjoy the most, to see guys go from where they're at now to where they probably never thought that they would get. And that's just plain old simple hard work.
Oh, yeah.
I can do it.
I love that aspect of sports. I just started coaching at Scott here in the last couple of years. I think that's been the most rewarding thing in coaching, especially guys that young, is you see them go from where somewhere they never thought they could get to somewhere to the state championship level even too. It's incredible, I think, watching that. You've been away from college football for a while now. How did you get back? How did you go about getting back into college football with Midland? How did that start?
Well, it just, I've been coaching youth football for the last 5 years, and my son Carson is about to go into high school this fall, and I just figured, let's continue. If there's an opportunity to get into the college level and help kids, develop into great young men and help win some football games and be part of something like that. And Midland was perfect. It's close. I know Jeff Jamrog very well from him being at Nebraska for all those years as an assistant coach, and then even under Bo Pelini's regime. So it just worked out, man. It was a lot of fun just to be looked at as a possible coach. If you look at it, everybody usually goes GA route when they're young in their 20s, and right after college they get involved somehow. And for me, my life has not kind of been the standard. It's been, I bought a business when I was 24 years old. Those are, not too many 24-year-olds are thinking about buying businesses. And so I've got 15 years of, life skills, and it's, it just transfers over to, helping these young men make good decisions, and, dealing with life situations gives you patience and knowledge. And that's where I kind of bring a little bit different dynamic to our coaching staff. It's a young staff. Our offensive coordinator, Ryan Williams, and I are the same age. We're both 39, and and we're the two oldest coaches on the staff, excluding our head coach.
That's
so
crazy.
That's just the way it is, and we're really enjoying it right now, and things look good.
You got practices underway, and I would call them spring practices, but it's not quite feeling like spring. So how have those been going so far?
It's Nebraska. You just got to be prepared to go out, and the weather is the weather, and we've been outside on some really cold, rainy days, really cold, early rainy days. We've started practice at 5 a.m. On our Fridays, so we go pretty early.
Yikes!
But I'll tell you what, it's been a lot of fun. Our players are focused. They're continuing to raise the bar every single time they step out on the field, and we still want them to get a little bit more focused on doing the right things and being consistent. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the effort and where we're going, and I think there's going to be some buy-in from all these players. That Jamrock is running a really good program, and this will start to translate to wins. It's when you can start winning in the classroom and winning in your meetings and winning as a person and doing the right things and making good decisions, then your chances of winning on the football field go up dramatically. So that's kind of where we're headed.
Now, we took a peek at Midland's roster from last season, and it seems like you have a lot of young guys at the running back position. Are there any guys that really stood out to you so far?
Yeah, we do have a pretty young roster. We've got 2 juniors. There's a senior. Daryl's back his senior year. And then we've got, 3 or 4 sophomores and then all the incoming freshmen. So it is a pretty young group. Everybody has got a little bit different style about them. Lucas Voppenford from Blair, he's pretty consistent, got good speed, makes a lot of good decisions. We've got, Gary Cannon, who played quarterback, halfway through the season last year. He's from San Diego and then moved to running back the last part of the season. And Gary's got a lot of talent, and we just got to get him to get excited and show his energy for that position. And I think he's, got very high potential. Adrian Kellogg II. I mean,
he's good.
Adrian from Millard North. Millard North Mustang. A lot of Millard North players on the Midland roster. So he's another guy that, the list goes on. Andrew Miller from Broken Bow. He's really been impressive this spring, and he knows his stuff. He's a steward of the game, and that really helps. So, have all these running backs out there competing for the job is going to create a great competitive atmosphere that makes every one of us better.
Yeah, I remember watching Adrian play in high school at Millard North, and he just always seemed to have really good vision on the field, which was something that really impressed me with him.
He's been hurt. He's recovering from a knee injury that he had. We haven't seen him yet. He's doing rehab, so hopefully here in the near future we get him back out of practice.
Yeah, speaking of injuries, are you planning on having your running backs do some extra neck stretches in case they get face masks like you did against Kansas State?
Yeah. You make a really good point. I might have to pull out one of those drills and just say, hey guys, check this out. Show the little video. I don't even think any of these guys were alive when it happened, so they might get a kick out of that one.
Yeah, I've just seen the picture of it. That was nasty watching that.
Yeah, what was that like though, getting your face jerked or your neck jerked around like that? Did you know in the moment that your head went back around that far?
No, not really. You're in the moment. You got a lot of adrenaline. I mean, you're in the moments of the game where you win or lose, and so you can feel no pain. But I'll tell you what, I felt a lot of pain the next day, the next week. I'm sure that some of my neck stiffness is due to that play, but it's part of the game. I wouldn't take one snap back. I mean, I really enjoyed my career at Nebraska, and obviously there's a few calls that I can point out in my career that didn't go our way, but I'm sure that's true with a lot of players. Since instant replay's been around, I'm sure that's changed things a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of your career in Nebraska, we got a couple of Mizzou fans here. Do you want to brag about that 95-yard touchdown run you had against them in 2001 real quick?
Well, yeah. One of the coaches brought over a couple of drop straps to me after the game.
That's awesome.
Man.
Speaking of Nebraska, how do you think that they will do with Scott Frost at the helm now? Do you think having a coach who played under Tom Osborne can help bring a championship back to Nebraska?
No doubt in my mind. I mean, Scott is a pure find. He's going to be a tremendous coach there at Nebraska, and I know he's still a young coach. Obviously did well at University of Central Florida. Has got a great staff in place. I was just at practice this morning, and man, they're really moving around at practice. They're really demanding energy, a lot of physicality, a lot of focus. They're throwing a lot at these guys offensively and defensively, and they're getting them to work. And football is a warrior sport. It's a physical sport, and I don't care how fast you play the game when it comes to how fast an offense runs, but you still need to be physical, and you still need to, in my opinion, dominate with the run game first.
I've talked to a couple players. I don't know if you remember Christian Banker from Scott from last year, but I met up with him over winter break, and I asked him about just the workout regimes and stuff there. And he said the only word he could really describe it was fast, like so much faster than what they've done in the past. So I think that's seriously going to help him out in the future, keeping that conditioning up and that strength up.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Duvall, he's brought on a tremendous work ethic in the weight room, and I think it's going to translate to the football field the very first year. I think they're going to be stronger, faster, less injuries, and that's going to help their confidence a lot.
Like Shane mentioned, I'm a Mizzou fan, so I kind of like to poke fun at Nebraska here and then, but I've grown to like Nebraska more than I've moved up closer to it. How long
Wasn't there some kick off a foot or something that happened a ways back? Something happened there. I don't know.
Yeah, that was a pretty good play. I remember that one.
All right, that's enough. How many years do you think that Nebraska fans will give Scott Frost before they want him out?
Well, I think they believe in Scott, and if Scott doesn't start off so well, I think that he's going to be given more slack than what a normal coach would be given. I mean, Scott is a young coach, but they're hot right now. The staff has done great things. We're playing in a really tough conference, and Nebraska's down towards the bottom right now. It's not like he's coming in and he's expected to keep Nebraska at the top of the Big Ten. Nebraska's never been at the top of the Big Ten.
Right.
And so I think there's a lot of room for improvement as a university. I don't know. I'm thinking that be about 4 or 5 years before, I think he starts feeling the heat. But I really do believe that, at the next couple, 3 years, obviously this next year's got a really tough schedule behind it. But in the next 2 or 3 years, I think Nebraska's competing for a conference championship.
I agree with you. I've said that to you the whole time. What do you think about Frost trying to build up the walk-on program, especially focusing on in-state recruits versus out-of-state recruits?
Well, the nice thing about Scott being our coach is that he understands the program very well. And having said that, he understands the walk-on program even better, being around it. So they're used to high numbers. They're used to kids coming in from small towns and being part of the passion and the excitement to play for Nebraska. And then the pure fact that you can earn a scholarship. There's been many walk-ons that have earned scholarships, have gone on to play in the NFL. So, does every coach get it right when they're recruiting high school kids? No, they don't. But that's the beauty of the walk-on program, is that, kids can come in and earn their way to the top and get a lot of playing time and be a part of it. And it really, I think, gives a lot of small towns a big connection to the program, which they haven't had at all in the recent years.
And I've always claimed that Memorial Stadium is the greatest atmosphere for college football. We have one guy here who's a Michigan fan, so he obviously begs to differ. But how did it feel to play in front of the Nebraska faithful at Memorial Stadium?
Nebraska's my first experience, I'll tell you, I flew out to play Cal Berkeley in 1998. Was a redshirt freshman that year, and this was my first start on the road. So you can imagine, 18, 19 years old, you're going out to, I had an injury. I had a bad hamstring. So here I am. I'm injured. I'm not going to be able to perform to the level that I want to. I'm starting the game, and I'm on the road in California against a pretty good California Berkeley team.
Yeah.
And I remember coming out of the locker room and looking up into the stands, and I literally saw 50% of that stadium was red. And I knew it was going to be a good day ever since I saw that moment. And that just goes to show you that, halfway across the country, even all the way across the country, that Nebraska is going to support their team no matter what. And I think as you've seen Nebraska, go up and down these past few years, with where the program's been and just the struggles it's had in recent times, that the spring game sold out in one day, 90,000 people. So that tells you right there that people in Nebraska are really excited, coming off of a bad season that we had, but they're still supporting the university and the football program.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Being born and raised in Nebraska, how much did it mean to you to be able to play for Nebraska and have the level of success that you did?
Well, I'm a first-born generation in Nebraska, and I played when I was a kid. All my games were on a Saturday afternoon while Nebraska was playing. So, I didn't really get a chance to watch Nebraska until I got to high school, because all those games were being played as I was playing. A lot of games were around noon on Saturdays. And I was obviously a Nebraska fan because of the offense that they ran. I became more of a fan during my high school years because watching Tommy Frazier and seeing what Scott Frost was doing and just watching their offense and saying, look, man, this is right for me. Like, I'm running option up here in Millard North, and, we're crushing it, and what a perfect place to go do the same thing in college. And I'm just really thankful that they recruited me as a quarterback, and Notre Dame wanted me as a running back, and Ohio State wanted me as a receiver. And I'll tell you, there wasn't many schools that were willing to put their neck out on the line for me at the quarterback position, other than Nebraska. So I'm pretty fortunate to have had that opportunity from Coach Osborne and Turner Gill.
Yeah. Speaking of Coach Osborne, who had the biggest impact on your football career, just in general?
It's a really good question. I've had a lot of great coaches. My youth coach was tremendous, George Conley. I'll never forget him saying quick feet. I just drilled it into my head. And so I think just by hearing that, I knew I had to move. Football is not a game where you can, sit on your heels. You got to be ready to go. And so I was always, ready with the ball in my hand. And I think that was, he made a big impact on me. I had a great basketball coach and mentor, Dr. Jim Brown. Was fortunate enough to play for a great high school coach. Coach Fred Petito has been at Millard North for over 30 years.
Staple there.
He's had a tremendous football program. And then I get recruited by Tom Osborne, and I get to play for Turner Gill, who was my quarterback coach there. So the list of guys that have influenced me as a football player have been tremendous. Even Frank Solich was a head coach there when I was there at Nebraska. So I don't know that I can say that there was one guy. I mean, there's a little bit of every one of these guys that I've got, the good fortune to learn from and to be a part of, that's kind of shaped who I am and how I coach.
It's a good football family.
Cool.
Yeah. Who would you say is the best player you ever played with?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always go back to Mike Brown. He was just, he was a strong safety at Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
Played, many years in the NFL with the Chicago Bears, and Mike was just, very hard-nosed, physical. Was a really tough guy. Could make any tackle in the open field, which was always impressive to me. He was very smart, a great teammate, a great leader, and that's why he played a long time in the league. So I always refer back to Mike Brown as being one of the best football players that I had a chance to play with. I mean, if you go to the college level or the the NFL pro level, I was with the Rams and I got to know Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, and all those guys, and obviously being with Grant Wistrom. There's been a lot of pros that I had a good fortune to play with, but still none of them are, Mike Brown was the ultimate guy.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great name to drop there. That he was unstoppable in Nebraska. Have you ever gotten to stay at the Heisman House? We were wondering.
I haven't. As far as I know, that place doesn't even exist.
It's
crap. Just on TV.
Wow.
No, you won the Heisman in a very QB-dominated race. We looked it up. Everyone in the top 6 as a quarterback. Although the 2 finalists went on to switch to wide receiver, you and Antoine Randall L. What do you think about guys like Lamar Jackson saying that he wants to remain a quarterback in the NFL when everyone seems to want him to make the switch to wide receiver or something else?
I love it, and I support it 110%. I think, you got to go with what your heart's telling you, and otherwise you're not going to believe what you're doing. And if there's one thing that I could go back and do, that would be, be a little more strong, hard-willed to say I'm a quarterback and that's what I'm going to do. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But, at least, you're standing by what you believe in. And I truly believe that Lamar Jackson's going to do great things in the NFL as a quarterback. He's got a ton of talent, can throw the ball. He's super fast. There's got to be a team. Look at Drew Brees. Look at, Russell Wilson. RG3, if he wasn't hurt, he'd still be playing. The list goes. Michael Vick. You can't tell me that, he's not a Michael Vick. I don't want to hear that he can't be a quarterback in the NFL. It doesn't make sense to me.
I agree with you.
Going back to your college days, who was one of those teams that you just hated while you were at Nebraska?
I didn't play with that level of hate. There was probably some stronger dislike, but
it's a good word.
I'd probably say at the time it was probably Colorado. It had nothing to do with their football team. It always had something to do with their fans during the game. So, as far as teams, there were a lot of competitive teams. Miami was very competitive. Oklahoma was very competitive. Texas was a good team. Towards the end of my career, Kansas State was always a competitive team. I actually, even throughout my whole career in Nebraska, Kansas State was pretty darn good. So I couldn't say there was a team out there that I hated, but there were some really good teams that were coached well and had great players and talent.
I'm so glad you said Colorado because I have maintained that I strongly dislike, we'll use that word again, Colorado for years up here, and no one has understood it, so I'm glad to have some backup on that.
I never understood it.
Well, I think it's more what happens with the students and the fans during the games that kind of bothers me.
Yeah.
You wish that, they'd step up and have a little bit more class, but, that's just me.
What bothers me is they got an extra down against Mizzou on the goal line.
That's right.
Yeah.
Jeez, now it's Colorado and Nebraska
that
you don't like, huh?
Anti-Colorado podcast.
Yeah.
We're calling that right now. One thing I read recently was Scott Frost talking about his emphasis on special teams. He said he wanted to get a lot of his starters out there on special teams, a lot of the best athletes out there. What are your thoughts? I know you're coaching special teams now at Midland too.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts kind of on that philosophy?
Well, I think it's a great philosophy, and it makes sense. Why wouldn't you want your best players out there on special teams? You have to treat special teams like you treat defense, like you treat offense. You can't just say, look, we're going to run our practice. 50% of the time is going to be defense and 50% is going to be offense. And, oh, wait, let's try to squeeze special teams in on Wednesday for 20 minutes. It's not going to work.
It's a third of the game.
Special teams is a huge part of the game. If you look at how it's affected field position, how it affects scoring, it's a really, really important part of the game. And you want your athletes and you want your playmakers to be out there, guys that can run down the field and shed blocks, guys that can get down the field with speed and make an explosive hit, guys that understand the game. It's one of these things where we're looking for, players during the spring. We're doing lots of drills trying to see, who's going to develop and who's going to make the special teams unit. We treat it with the utmost importance on our team, and most teams should do that. So I agree with what Scott said. I think he's doing the right thing.
Yeah, I do too. I think a lot of people overlook it and they just see it as, like you said, just kind of a side thought. But when you look into how big of a factor that can play, and especially like if you can flip the field on someone and pin them inside the 5 with a good punt or something, that really can affect the momentum of the game. Yeah,
it changes the game in an instant. A punt return for a touchdown, blocked kick, kickoff return for a touchdown. Heck, when your offense doesn't have to go out there and do it, let the kickoff and punt team do it. It just changes the game.
Did you get a chance to watch the Combine this year?
I did not, but I did see some pieces of it. What stuck out to me is the kid from UCF with one hand, Griffin.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's the guy that really stood out in the Combine this year. Got a lot of publicity for how fast he ran and the things that he's doing with only his disability.
Unbelievable.
It's
athlete.
impressive.
Yeah.
So impressive.
We'll end it with this one. What advice do you have to any kids out there aspiring to be great football players or coaches?
I honestly say that you got to have passion for this. It's not something that you can just think about and talk about. You actually have to do it. And when I say do it, I mean you need to show up to the weight room. You need to show up and watch film. You need to show up, and even when your coach isn't telling you to show up, you do things on your own. you make your steps right. If you're a running back or receiver, if you're a quarterback, you make your drops perfect. You know, you don't have to be around your coach all the time to be working on those small little things. It's, you know, we're preaching all the time. It's about the small details. It's about the little things. I mean, going out there and making sure that you're right on every single play and being consistent and working on it. So, you know, those are the guys that are going to excel, the guys that, you know, think they're great and only have to show up to practice and show up to the game. And, yeah, it may work for a certain amount of time. You can get so far on your athletic ability, but how you handle yourself, how you prepare, how you study the game, the things that you know. Do you know offensive in line play? If you're a running back, do you know what the quarterback's doing and why? It's a lot to learn. You know, there's a lot of positions, a lot of moving parts in football, and I just, you know, my advice would be to learn as much of the game as you can from all positions. Make yourself that much more valuable as a teammate and a leader.
Shane said he had the last one, but I got a good one right here. How much does the Heisman actually weigh? Is it really heavy?
You know, it's much heavier than what people would think. It's probably 45, 50 pounds.
Wow. Holy moly.
Yeah, it's up there. I mean, it's not light by any means, but you know, that night that you win it, you're throwing it over your head like you don't feel it. So
Yeah.
you know that.
Do you know where it is? Do you still keep tabs on it?
Yeah, I've got it over at my place. We keep it pretty safe. It moves around a little bit. The school at the university's got one, and then I got the one that night. So the school has a replica that they display there at the Heisman room, and then I've got one that was given to me that night for personal use. So, yeah, it's pretty cool, man.
That's neat.
Pretty cool thing.
Well, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. I'm glad you guys reached out.
Oh, absolutely.
Thanks, Tucker. Thanks, Shane. And you guys call me anytime.
Oh, sounds good.
Love to have you on again.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Big thanks to Eric Crouch for coming on the podcast. Now, fellas, let's get into the mailbag.
You've got mail.
Our first question, Adam wants to know our opinions on the future of esports. Do we think it blows up? Does it stay in a niche market audience? Does it have any overlap with quote-unquote real sports fans?
I think this is definitely kind of the thing in the future. I think this really opens up the market for sports fans. I mean, I know for the most part none of us can get enough sports, so watching real sports all the time, I think a lot of people would like to watch something like this. It does right now have that niche market audience where it's really focused on the kinds of kids who do just play video games all the time, you know? That's kind of the stereotype for people who are really into esports. But I can see a lot of things taking off. Like I can see like Madden tournaments getting really big, especially with football fans. I mean, who doesn't love to watch more football all the time? One thing, I've told you guys about this privately, not on the show, but this is something I am very passionate about getting changed by the Pro Bowl. First off, we all know the Pro Bowl, it's boring. Like nothing really happens in the Pro Bowl. It's kind of, the views have been down for it. So I think one way to make the Pro Bowl more exciting is you have a Madden tournament, like a national Madden tournament, and then the two Madden players who would be in the championship game both coach the Pro Bowl. Like they call the plays, they give them a PlayStation and let them like call the plays off of Madden, and the players in real life have to run those plays. I think that'd be so cool to like combine esports and real sports and just make the Pro Bowl at least more interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think that esports, because a lot of people like video games. People like watching, other people play video games and stream stuff like that. You see it on like Twitch. You see guys like Ben Simmons and Karl Anthony Towns. They just had something like that in the NBA where they're playing PlayerUnknown's Battleground and they're playing like Fortnite, stuff like that. And they've got star athletes talking to each other on platforms like that. So video games are of interest to people like athletes, people who watch sports. And I think that they've done a lot more now since we do have video games. They've become more lifelike. They like to do the simulations of things, big games. They simulate, like national championships for college football. They simulate the Super Bowl. People care about that a lot. A lot of sports fans care enough to go out and buy video games like, the Maddens, the MLBs, the 2Ks, the FIFAs. They like to go out and buy those. So I think that video games are only growing in popularity. Therefore, I think esports will only grow in popularity. I think some people might pay more attention to that. I know that they've talked about introducing like a 2K tournament and broadcasting that on television. So I think like there is going to be an overlap a little bit with like real sports per se and the esports, especially in the future, when we're kind of shifting to more of a realistic video gaming like experience.
Was just looking up the NBA 2K League when you guys were talking here, and it's legit. They have a legit website and everything. The season tips off May 2018 and run through August. prior to the season beginning, there will be tryouts that have already happened. And the draft's actually April 4th. They had a lottery where they made up like the ping pong balls of the team's logos. And like they go through like the whole like franchise and everything, which is it's a really cool thing. Like, you know, you like do it with your buddies, but now these guys are doing it on a professional level. So I think this thing will definitely be a hit, especially guys like myself who love to play these sports video games, MLB The Show, 2K, Madden, things like that. It's something that these sports fans can also follow along with and have their favorite esports gamers.
I think one of the reasons that like esports has become so like popular and stuff like that and will continue to become more popular is because the reason people like football, basketball, baseball is because those are sports that they played growing up and they weren't quite good enough to play when they got older. And I feel like it'd be the same because like when I play Call of Duty, I'm garbage at Call of Duty, but I might watch a Twitch streamer play Call of Duty. So I feel like it's the same. Maybe it's these guys who really like these video games, so they want to see somebody else play them.
I think esports rising has really made me realize how old and like out of the loop I am, because I literally just found out what Twitch was like 2 weeks ago. And apparently it's like a really big thing. Like Drake was on it, Juju Smith-Schuster were on it, watching that like ninja guy, whoever that is. So I don't know. I think this really is kind of the sport of the future. I think we are going to see it blow up here in a couple of years at the minimum.
It's really kind of cool to watch if you ever like sit down and watch it. It's a really interesting experience. It might be something I want to go to in the future just to like experience it. But like it's these massive like stadiums that are filled with people, and then it's like five guys sitting at a computer, 5 guys or women sitting at a computer playing the video game on it, and everybody's watching their every move. And like the commentators, I think Tuck and I might have watched one on ESPN2 one time, and like they were breaking it down, and then they were like, "Ooh, that's a critical mistake," and then the team lost. So like they have actual commentators breaking down the science. It's really pretty interesting.
And to touch on the thing that he says, does it have any overlap with real sports fans? I definitely think it does, especially with sports
I agree.
video games.
I think it does too.
I like your idea about the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, I think that'd be so cool to have like 2 like 13-year-old kids out here coaching the Pro Bowl. That would be dope.
No, you probably have like a 35-year-old guy who lives with his mom and all he does is play Madden. It's probably who's going to win.
True.
So Tucker in 10 years?
Ouch. Dang.
I was also burning myself because I said 10 years, and I think the math is wrong there.
In 10 years, I'd be 29.
The math
I'd be 29 in 10 years. Next question. This is from Josh in Des Moines. Would you rather play hockey with baseball bats or baseball with hockey sticks? Now, we kind of previously discussed this before coming on air, and we seem to have differing opinions. So, Kieran, do you want to go ahead and give your pitch?
I think it'd be easier to play hockey with baseball bats simply for the fact that if we're at the professional level, these pitchers are throwing 90 miles an hour, throwing this ball. There's no way a hockey stick could handle that. But for hockey, you could like stick the bat on top of the puck and kind of like flick it around that way. I feel like it'd be way easier because it'd be the same science of trying to square up 2 round objects, like squaring up a baseball with a round bat. So it'd be like trying to square up a round hockey puck with a round baseball bat. I think the baseball bat would have to be like maybe longer, but I feel like it'd be easier.
Yeah, I thought about this a different way because when I read it, it said, would you rather play hockey with a baseball bats or with baseball with hockey sticks? So I thought of it from my own perspective. So I'm thinking of like just us like guys just goofing around or whatever, trying to play these games. But I think it'd be way harder for us to control pucks with baseball bats because I'm coming at you guys hard if we're playing this. I'm going to smash you guys into the walls. There's no way you're controlling the puck with me causing damage out there or anyone else that we're playing with, not just me. I'm not the only headhunter out here. But I think we could at our level. I don't know if we're throwing the ball hard enough to crack a hockey stick. It would be incredibly hard to hit it, I think, because the hockey stick's so narrow. But I think for me that's the better option than playing hockey with baseball bats.
You talk about the control. How would you shoot a hockey puck?
Yeah, see, there's no way. You'd have to kick it. Like, you couldn't actually, like,
that's no goal
slide it in. Yeah, I know, but, like, there's no refs out here.
There's rec league.
Yeah.
At the same time, I don't know, even if you put, hockey stick on baseball, that's not going to travel, like, at all, other than a few feet from the plate. So you've got some real problems in, like, either game. I was thinking, like, these hockey players were taking these baseball bats, sort of settling the puck like they would a soccer ball before they light up a shot, then bringing the bat back and swinging that down on the ice and trying to make contact that way. There's a lot of times when you get hit with, like, the hockey stick, but a solid-ass bat like that is going to do some real damage. So which would I rather play? I think I would be a pitcher throwing in the baseball game where the batters have to use the hockey sticks. Because I know I'm not going to allow any bombs, so.
Think of the materials used, too. So some of these hockey sticks now are like fiberglass. Are we talking wood bats or are we talking aluminum bats here?
I think at our level, if we're going professional, I think you use what the professionals use. So it'd be wood bats and whatever high-tech hockey sticks are using now. But I think if you're playing at our level, I think it's aluminum bats and wooden hockey sticks. But to go again to the point Toby said about not being able to like drive the ball any distance, at least you can bank on your buddies making errors with a throw to first. So you can still get on base or get walked, but you're not going to be hitting dingers. There's no way.
Would you hit the blade of the hockey stick out, or would you hit with the blade of that in?
I've thought about it. I think you'd have to hit with like the neck of the stick or whatever you call it, the shaft. I guess I don't know the technical term. Yeah. Because I think the blade's too thin, and I think if you try to do that, it would like bend backwards. I don't know if you could really get any solid contact off it. You get a foul ball, if anything. But I think you'd have to use the shaft.
The catcher would have to be like 2 feet further back, too.
Oh, yeah, you'd take his head off with that thing. Same with the ump. Would you even have a catcher? Or would you just like...
You'd have to.
Yeah, there'd just be no stealing bases if there's no catcher. Yeah,
if you had no catcher. It'd be like in kickball.
Yeah.
No catcher, can't steal bases.
Yeah. What about ghost players? Can you play ghost players?
Ghost runners?
Depends on how many players you have.
I guess that
3 players.
That is an unrelated question. We're getting too deep into this.
So our final statement is it's inconclusive and it would suck to switch this.
We're torn. So if you guys have any ideas, tweet us.
We'll put out a poll.
We'll put out a poll. Let us know what you guys think about that one.
Last question here. What are your go-to sports movies to watch? Thank you to Carlos in Cincinnati for sending us that question. I'll go ahead and kick it off. Movie I just watched the other day, Bull Durham. I don't know if you guys have seen.
That is a very good movie.
Very good baseball movie. Got great, fantastic quotes in that movie. I love to drop them every once in a while.
One of the movies I just watched recently, sports movie I like to watch, Friday Night Lights, the movie. Everyone who knows me knows I prefer the TV show, but the movie is a really good one to watch. It's one of those just heartbreaking movies at the end of it. But one thing that's always confusing me about that movie is if you look into the real story of that team, they did not go undefeated in the regular season. They did not even make it to the state championship. They lost in the semifinals. Why do they get a movie? Or why do they get a book deal? You know what I mean? Like, I won 2 state championships. Like, how come I don't get a movie out here?
Shane just tried to work that into the podcast. He was thinking about how can I work in. I haven't mentioned
I've been trying for weeks to work that into the podcast.
My favorite sports movie, it's one of my favorite movies, probably top 3 of my favorite movies. And that's the movie Warrior with Tom Hardy and Joel Edgerton. Have you guys seen that movie?
That is seriously one of my all-time favorite movies. I totally forgot to.
It's a dope movie. It's about MMA fighting. It's emotional. It's got great action. Tugs at the heartstrings. If you're listening to this and haven't seen Warrior, I highly recommend that movie.
Tom Hardy is so good in that movie. He is unreal.
Tom Hardy.
He's so big. Like, how do you get that big?
Tom Hardy, Joel Edgerton. What's his name? Nicholas Nolte.
Nick Nolte from Omaha, Nebraska.
Nick Nolte is in that too, and it's a heart-wrenching story.
Yeah, it's so good, though.
I'm assuming we're not getting, documentaries and stuff like that. Otherwise, I would obviously go Fab 5 because that's really the only sports movie that draws, a whole bunch of emotion out of me every single time I watch it. Even though I wasn't alive then, watching a 20-year-old kid my age make the biggest mistake of probably his entire basketball career. Maybe I wouldn't say his life, but certainly of his basketball career in front of the largest audience that he's probably ever played in front of, both there and on TV. It tugs at the heartstrings a little bit when you watch it because you just feel so bad for the kid. And I think all the 30 for 30 documentaries, stuff like that, really bring out that emotion in you. And my movie that's a remake or with actors, paid actors, stuff like that, would have to be Miracle on Ice because the movie itself, the speech that the coach gives before they go out and play that game against the Soviet Union. It's just one of the classic scenes from any sports movie, and you love seeing those emotional pump up speeches before games and stuff like that, and that's probably one of the tops in any sports movie that I've ever seen. I'm also a big fan of Major Leagues with Charlie Sheen. Love that movie. I really like all the characters that they get on there. They make a little reference to Willie Mays in the movie, Pedro Serrano, the very superstitious baseball player, and all the baseball players talk about their superstitions. They've got Wild Thing out there, Charlie Sheen, and I don't think anyone's ever been more true to their character than Wild Thing as Charlie Sheen has. So I think that movie there is one of my favorites, obviously a fictional movie because the Indians haven't won anything. So very like that. I'd probably say that's my favorite fictional sports movie.
My favorite, if we're going documentaries, my favorite documentary is Survive and Advance because I'm a big.
That's a good one.
I'm a big Jimmy V fan. He's probably one of the guys that, even though I wasn't alive when he was alive, he's probably one of the figures that I look up to the most.
One of the sports movies, you're talking about quotes, Tucker, that I think a lot of people don't really think of it as a sports movie because it was such a good comedy, but Caddyshack is one of my all-time top quoted movies of all time. Bill Murray was unbelievable in it. Rodney Dangerfield was hilarious. Chevy Chase, who's supposed to be really like the big star in that movie, but kind of got overshadowed by Bill Murray and Rodney Dangerfield. You can't find a bad scene in that whole movie. It is hysterical. Bill Murray is talking about when he was caddying for the Dalai Lama. He goes, he stiffed me on the tip, but he said on my deathbed I'll have eternal consciousness, so I got that going for me. Like that, seriously, one of the funniest lines ever. He seriously has like a direct string to my funny bone, so that's another one of my all-time favorite sports movies.
One of my favorite documentaries it's called Fastball. It's on Netflix. It just talks about the history of the fastball, and it shows how the fastballs have gotten faster over time, how people have learned to adapt to a fastball, how pitchers throw now, and it's a good documentary if you really love the game of baseball. Any final thoughts?
I forgot to mention this earlier, but I watched that McDonald's All-American game, and the Duke-UNC rivalry, which I've said is the best in college basketball, I think it's going to be even better next year because Nasser Little, MVP of the McDonald's All-American game, is a savage, and he's coming after Zion Williamson, and you saw it yesterday. Before they even put on the powder blue and the Duke blue, he was coming after him hard yesterday. I'm super excited already for college basketball next season. Thank you, Nasser Little. And I hope Roy Williams brings even more fire to him because he's one scary dude.
That'll do it. Thanks for tuning in to episode 8 of Nosebleed Radio. Follow us on Twitter at NosebleedSnow. Like us on Facebook at Nosebleed Knowledge. We'll see ya.